Good morning. How's everybody?
Doing well. How are you?
Well as well.
Good morning. Good
Morning. What do we have? 1 week left? What week is this?
Yeah, we have 1 week left. It's really crazy.
Wow. Well, I hope the weather will be good next week. We can maybe get together. Except for you, Anna.
Sorry, can't make it.
Oh yeah.
You want to drive?
Maybe.
You want to drive on 35? Like, sounds fun.
Yeah, so the weather looks like it might be pretty good next Saturday. So we usually try to get together socially occasionally. And so next week will probably be a good time since we'll be ending the first module. So I can announce more about that, but maybe just put that in your calendar for now if you want to try and hang out after class next week.
And we will probably be going 1.5 hours to 2 hours next Saturday as well to, we're gonna build a portfolio website. So after that. Okay, well, do you have any more announcements, Zach, or anything? Okay, did we already get all the mentors assigned?
Yeah, we did. Every team, there's 3 teams now, sorry Boots, and each team has 2 mentors, and we'll start doing office hours this week.
Okay, and all teams know their dates and all that?
Yeah, 1 team's on Monday, 2 teams are on Tuesday, and then I'll send like a Google Meet in both their channels before those meetings. Yep.
Great. Are they keeping those mentors for module 2?
Yeah, I think we'll try and just keep them for as long as we can
Okay,
throughout the whole thing.
cool. All right. Well, welcome back, guys. Happy Saturday. Let's dive into any questions that you guys have. Did anybody make the header responsive, or were you just waiting for class today? Okay, it's fine. We had some good questions last time. We can just go ahead and get started, but you guys just let me know if you do have any questions that pop up. We are going to finish our kind of intro to responsive design. Today. And then we are going to, let's see here. Yeah, we're going to get into Bootstrap. We're going to talk about units, and then we're going to get into Bootstrap and do an intro to how helpful that's going to be in regards to building a responsive website easily. So I'm going to just add on to our day 5 materials since we weren't quite done. So I'm just going to open that code. I guess I exited out of it. Okay. Okay. All right, so this is what we had. Yesterday or Wednesday. So this is the header that we built, and like, we haven't made it responsive yet. So after we finish that, we're going to fix that. And then we have our media queries that we started down here, which is the foundation to making things responsive, because as we did here, you can see in our CSS, our media queries here, we have 3, and we have them at 3 different what's called breakpoints. This 1200 pixels, 800 pixels, 600 pixels, those are the breakpoints that we set. And so it goes from the yellow, you can see down here, yellow to blue to red, and then back to green, following our breakpoints here. Just as a review, we can set max width or min width. We're going to do a min width example here in a second, but we did these max width. So it's going to apply the styles we put in here, as many as we want. Could just have lots and lots of styles here. And it's only going to apply when the screen size is less than 600 pixels. And then, up here, less than 800 pixels. But because this style is applied after, this media query only applies between 600 and 800. That's the CSS cascading we talked about, and why it's so important with media queries to make sure that you have them in the correct order. So when we're using max width, it has to go from largest breakpoint to smallest. That way your intervals are set correctly. Because if we take this media query 1200 and make it last, because right, it's going down our sheet. So it applies this, and then it applies this, and then it applies this. And since this one is the last thing applied, it's going to apply it to everything under 1200 pixels, which is, basically everything. So really important to make sure that you have those in the correct order. But there's other ways to do this too. We can use min width. So let's go to our HTML file. And let's make another container. And then let's add a class called red. Okay. So now we have another container, and the code for containers up here, if you guys are starting fresh. So we just created a div. We gave it 2 classes, container and red, or you can just combine all this into one class if you've started, over. So we have this. And obviously it's not changing colors right now because we haven't set any media queries. So let's see how it works the other way. Okay. So minimum width 600 pixels. So anybody have an idea of, I guess, how this applies, if that makes sense? How big does the screen have to be for this background color aqua to apply?
It has to be smaller than 600 pixels, right?
It has to be greater than 600.
Okay.
It's kind of confusing in that way because it says min width. So you do think it's going to be less than, but it just means the minimum width for that style to start is 600 pixels. So, you know, on the small below 600 pixels, it's red, but as soon as we hit 600 pixels, now it's aqua. It has to be at least 600 pixels in order for it to apply. And then putting it in the correct order is going to start our intervals again. Okay. So now the minimum, the starting point for this background gray is 800 pixels. The starting point here is 600 pixels. So same thing, anything less than 600 pixels is going to be red. Anything greater than 600 pixels is aqua, and it would stay this way indefinitely. But we wrote another command that says once we get to 800, we want to change that to gray. And it will stay. And then last one, and you could set as many breakpoints as you want. Just doing this for simplicity, show you how it works. Okay. So same thing, anything less than 600 is just its base color, which we set its base color to red. And now anything over 600 is going to be aqua. Anything over 800 is gray. And then we overwrite it one more time when it hits 1200 to turn to pink, where it stays. So you can use the inspector to inspect this easily. Remember, you can press this toggle device toolbar button to get this, and you can see our dimensions here can start at mobile and go up. You can see the pixels change here, and we can also drag. But as you can see, it's actually not changing all the way. And that's because I didn't do something. So it's really important when you're doing responsive design in your HTML file, we need to use the required meta tag. So I'm just labeling our style sheet, but then we need I'm just gonna copy this in. So this is just a standard meta tag that you need to use. it sets our initial point of reference. So we can see here initial scale 1, viewport. So this is required here. So you guys will just want to copy and paste that into your designs. If you're just using pure CSS, when we get into Bootstrap, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but you'll need this if you're using pure CSS. So let me put this back. Let's go here. Should work now. Yeah, now it's working how we would think. So now you can actually see the breakpoints, which this is hard because I wish you could see both screens, but. So it's less than 600 pixels. So we're in our beginning state, and then just keep your eye on this number as we approach 600. Oops. Okay, you can see right as we go over 600, it immediately turns to aqua, and then 800, it changes again. So this is a little bit easier way to visualize instead of how I was doing it, where I was just moving it, in which you can see it. But if you want to be really exact and see when you're where your breakpoints are, you can use the inspect tool. And so kind of how we talked about there being a lot of theories on like how many breakpoints do you set? How do you adjust the design? When do you adjust the design for what sizes? Because there's so many different screen sizes. Bootstrap's actually going to make that really easy. But if you're using pure CSS, a really good way to do it is to look at when your design breaks. So we designed this desktop first, like we talked about, because you can see here, this is like 1300 pixels. This is a desktop screen. It looks good. This is how we designed it. But as we get, if I click up here to mobile, yeah, nobody wants to look at that on their mobile phone. And if you remember the styles here that we applied, let's go up. The styles we applied here. This text box, we gave it a width of 33%. So like on a mobile device, do we really need to split this tiny screen and give text to only 33% of the whole thing? You can see no. So that is something we're going to change. So going with how the design breaks, we designed this desktop first. I'm just going to slowly bring this in and kind of watch what happens. You can see we've already gone in. It still looks pretty good, looks okay. Looks okay. It's probably going to be a little bit more proportional here too versus like long. And it looks good. We can keep moving it, and let's say somewhere around 700, things are kind of looking crammed. You don't like the look of that, but you could choose anywhere you wanted. Let's say you think it would look better at 900 or 800. You don't think this looks good, up to you. But I'm seeing just here, and this is just totally subjective, but 700, it's definitely too small. So let's change it. I'm going to exit out of inspect here. Okay. So we said 700, and so we want it to apply when the screen size is 700 pixels or smaller. We want to apply a new style. So let's use, I'm going to comment these out right now because adding all these additional styles here might mess with what we're doing. So I'm just going to comment those out. That's fine. Okay. Or less. Okay. So do you guys think we're going to want to use max width or min width to apply to 700 pixels or less?
Max width?
Yes. Great job. Okay, and our class, let's see, we applied this to header text. So let's change our styles on header text. Okay, so we set our dimension that we wanted to change. Now, what do we need to change? When you're changing stuff, you also need to make sure, because sometimes you might not get the correct functionality because you might have something that needs overwritten. I don't think we'll have anything weird here, but let's see what happens. So first of all, we had width set to 33%. So like I said, it's mobile or less. Usually that design takes whatever header you have and it puts it into single columns because, you know, it's a small screen. So you needed to take up the whole thing. So let's do width. Let's do viewport. Wanted to take up, we're going to go over these units after this as well. So change the width to viewport width. So it's 75% of this screen. And the reason why I didn't necessarily do 100 is just because, well, now we're getting some weird functionality because we still have styling applied on our other stuff. But so I'll just leave it back here for now. But you know, when you have it slightly smaller, if a container is 100% and you're making it 75% of that, you know, it's just kind of nestled or centered in there a little bit more. So it's just a style thing, but you can make it whatever width you wanted. And let's see here. So we need to change that. We need to change the position. You can see the reason why when I changed this to 100, it was off to the side is because we've got this positioning, you know, applied. So we need to change the position. So we already have position absolute set because it's inside this image, which is set to relative. So we don't need to change that, but we do need to change its position because we just want it to be in the center now. And now you can see it's nicely in the center. Okay, so we changed the position. You know, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we have the large screen. And then once we get down to 700 pixels, we have changed it. So I'm not going to do all these right now. You might want to keep changing it, you know, to see where it breaks again and make it even smaller. But right now, this is what we want to do. And let me show you how you can also change other things, because obviously the smaller the screen size gets, you also might want to change font. Okay, so, and I'm not totally sure what that font size is, but let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see how it got significantly smaller there, and we could even change the paragraph too if you wanted. We could change the button. Make it as small as you want. We could even use the transform, make it half the size. You probably wouldn't want to do that, but I just want to show you guys the transform property again. So yeah, you can apply whatever styles you want until your heart is content and you feel like, yes, that looks good. I'm done. So, okay, that is the header. Let's go over units. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Just real quick, like, what is the preference to using like min width versus max width? Like, when would you know which one would be better to use?
So you'll usually just pick one to design a website by. So you would just have all of your breakpoints set up using max width, or all of them set up using min width, and you would have them kind of cascaded like this. I really don't think that you would mix them. I can't think of a situation off the top of my head where you would mix them, but I guess want to totally say you would never do that because I'm not totally sure. But usually how I've seen it is you will pick one, and then that is how you go with. There's not necessarily a preference over which way you want to do it. It's really kind of doing the same thing. Either way, you've set up intervals. It's just kind of a preference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you guys have seen me use all kinds of units. I probably should have explained it earlier, but we're gonna actually go over it now so you guys can see it. So there's several different kinds of units. And actually, I'm gonna create a new file because it's gonna start having us scroll and it's gonna be kind of hard to do that. So. Okay. I'm gonna stop this and go live again. All right, so we've got a new one. Okay, let's create another CSS sheet as well. Call it units.css. And we do need to link that. I'm just going to set that here for a second in case you guys are coding along. I want to finish that up real quick. Okay, so you guys have seen pixels a lot. We got pixels. We have rem. I'll explain what that means in a minute. We have percent. Okay. We have the viewport we talked about. Viewport height, viewport width. Okay. So units are important when talking about responsive design because pixels don't change by themselves. So you would have to change them manually every single time the design changes. Like in our header that we made, we changed our font size 3 different times. And you might have to change it again and again and again, because depending on how big and how small, might have many different stages of font size. And you have to change it because pixels are a very specific value. Where is my, oh, here we go. Okay. And yeah, they don't change. So rem and m here, actually all of these here underneath pixels are responsive units. And you can think about this just like before you know what these are, percentages. When you assign up percentages, you're not saying I want this to be 3 units long. You're saying I want this to be a certain percentage of the parent element. So as that parent element changes, gets smaller and gets bigger, that specific value is going to change in accordance to that. Therefore, it is responsive. And rem and m work in the same way. So let's see here. Let's make a div here called parent. And let's put a header in here. So rem is what you're actually going to use. And when we start getting into coding next week, actually coding projects, instead of setting your units to pixels, it's recommended to use rem. And this R stands for the root element. So one rem equals 16 pixels when the root element, which is our HTML document, equals 100%. So let me show you how this works. Let's apply a class there. And just to make this easier to read, I'm going to put a style tag so we can just change our CSS styles right here and fit it all on one screen. Okay, actually, I'm going to get rid of this. Okay. So let's do font size. Okay, so we're down here. Font size 16 pixels. Now, the root element is the HTML document. So we can select that by doing HTML and doing font size. I'm just going to do 100%. Just so you see. Okay, so we've got a header. It's got a 16 pixels. Let's change our root element to 200%. Okay. I'm gonna, so kind of confusing. Okay. So 100%. And then 200%. You can see that this is not changing. And that is because we set it as pixels. So it's 16 pixels, no matter what. We can change it to 32 pixels and it'll change. But same thing here. We change the root element. It has no effect. An example of changing the root element's font size. So if you think of zoom, when you zoom in and out on a web page, that will change your whole document's font size. And so if you were to use pixels, you know, that would not affect it. So, okay, so that's how that works. But let's say we want to make it responsive. We don't want to change this, these units at all the time. So let's make it 1 rem. Okay. So, and let's make it 100%. Okay. So this would be actually 16 pixels here of what we're getting. And I guess we can show you that by okay, so these are the same, but when we change this to 200, this one has doubled. So this is actually 32 pixels. So it's changing. And yeah, okay. So you can see how it's responding. I'm going to show you why this is really important using media queries here in a second, but it's responding to this root element or the HTML element. But we also have em, and that is going to respond to the parent. So most of the time you do want your units to respond to the root element, but there might be situations where you don't want that font size to change. You need it to always be the same size within a parent element. And so you could use em for that. So let's change header 1 to use em, and then let's use this parent, because because it's wrapped inside this parent class. And let's set its font size to 16 pixels. Okay, now if we change this parent to 32 pixels, it's changing. Still changing. Now let's change this HTML element. Okay, you see how we changed it? But this header didn't change at all because it's responding to whatever we have set within the parent. Okay. Trying to think here how to show you this. Okay, so one benefit here okay. I actually need to set classes on here. So we'll add these. So you're designing your website and you've typed up a bunch of stuff here. And you want to make all of your font responsive at the same time. So let's make sure we've got our starting point. So let's change this header to and only use rems. So let's do one rem. And then let's change this one to rem. And then we have a paragraph. So let's, and you can make these like that too. Okay. Okay, so we've set these in response to the root element. So what we can actually do okay. And then yeah. Let's just do two. Let's pick these two where we want to change our font size. Because the screen's getting larger, so we want our font to be larger. So we have it normal here. Let's check it out. So we set it 600 and 1,000. Okay, so we're not quite at 600 yet. Let's see what happens when we cross 600. Nothing. Well, you can see here it's changing. So we've got our units, and then now we've increased it and we've increased it again. I hope this is apparent. It's kind of hard right now when we haven't, we've only got 3 things here, but essentially we've changed text on all 3 of our elements using 2 lines of code, like 2 just using a single class of changing the root element. We didn't have to change our headers. We didn't have to change our paragraph. We didn't have to go in and manually like class for class where, you know, we change it on the H1 and then we change it on the H2 and then we want to apply this on paragraph and then we might have some more stuff that we want to change on the button. You know, you would have to, if you have a whole website designed out, you would have to go through and individually change the pixels on every single element. But this using rem prevents you from doing that because now, since we've got everything in relationship to the root element, now at our media queries, we've already done a huge portion of the responsive design with very few lines of code. That's very easy to do. So that's gonna shrink and expand as you want simply. And yeah, there is gonna be other stuff that you need to change, but it's really nice when you can imagine you've typed out this huge page and then you type these 2 lines of code and you're like shrinking and expanding and you can see it all kind of scaling appropriately. And so that's a reason why you want to use these responsive units. Okay. So let's get into Bootstrap. Does anybody have questions over that?
Yeah, I do. So do you just always want to use rem then on everything, or like when would you use rem? When would you use m? When would you use? I mean, I guess it depends, but
Yeah,
how do you know it?
I don't have a good example right
Yeah.
now of when you would use M. I could find one for you. I haven't done any design in a while, but I would say there is somewhat of some debate among programmers about which unit is better to use. But from what I have seen, a majority probably use the rem, and you would want to use rem over pixels, you know, almost always. Sometimes you might not want to use rem if it's something that you don't want to change. That could potentially be like a border, let's say, where you want a border around an element to be the same size no matter what. You might use pixels for that. So you do need to kind of decide. But if you wanted to scale, I would say using rem. What is a good example of when you would use M? Yeah, let me think of an example for you, but I guess this is probably just repeating what I already said. But if you had some sort of element on your page and you just didn't want it to scale, like maybe you have some text inside a box and no matter how big the screen got, you want that text to only be in relationship to that box. You don't want it to respond to the page. So you would use that. If you want to change it from scaling with the page to only to what it's inside being the box, yeah, you would use M, but I'm not really sure right now what that would be, but there is a lot out there that you can read about units. Like I said, like a lot of things start being programmers' preferences and what they find that they like to use. So,
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay. So let's talk about Bootstrap. make another file. I'm gonna exit out of these. Okay, totally changing gears here. So you can use pure CSS to make your layouts. You guys did Flexbox in your homework. That is a way to use pure CSS to do your layouts. You can always use pure CSS, but there are things out here like Bootstrap, but there's a lot of other options too. I've only used Bootstrap, but there are other libraries that you can use as well that are these like front end design libraries. And basically, they have done a lot of the work for you. They have created, let's just show you here. Like, they've created and styled buttons for you that you can easily add with just a line of code. There are drop downs that they've created. They've created a color systems for you. They've done a lot of the work. And one reason why you want to use Bootstrap is because it's got this grid system that uses Flexbox so that you can very easily make things responsive. And we're not going to talk about all of that today with the responsiveness. We're going to do that on Wednesday. But just to kind of show you here, so like Bootstrap has set its own 6 different breakpoints here. You can see the pixels. So you can easily build and add on things a lot faster than you having to write out all of your own media queries and all of this sort of thing. So I'm going to show you how to set it up, kind of how to start using it. And if we have time, we'll get into the grid, but I think we're going to save most of the grid and layout stuff to learn how to lay out your system on Wednesday. And then, yeah, I really love Bootstrap. Okay, so let me put this link in here. Yeah, and someone said they have used both min and max width for designing for a tablet, so it is possible. Okay, so I sent the link in the chat there. Bootstrap is super easy to get up and going. If you're curious, you can actually read through this, but the easiest way to get started is just this starter template. You can literally just copy it and paste it in here, and it has everything you need to get started. So we have the meta tags that we talked about. These are required for the responsive design. This is the link to the Bootstrap CSS. So this is what gives us access to a huge library of already written CSS. They've just given us a, little starter here, hello world. And then it's even got some JavaScript already linked in. And so it says you can use option 1 or 2. So I always just use option 1, and you could leave this here. It's commented out, no problem, but I always like to remove it. So you have got your first Bootstrap set up. So I'm going to end my live server and start a new one. Okay. So we already got it set up. So you can see already that this H1, like we haven't applied any custom CSS to this H1, but it doesn't look like our other headers have before, does it? No, and that's because Bootstrap has already set up styling and it's already better looking. So once you have your setup here using the starter template, there's so much that you can go through here. Let's start with our typography. Here we go. So under content, typography, these are all of our headers. So you know that we have an H1 through an H6. They have changed it to be these sizes and styles. They have also made display headings. And they have all these code snippets that show you how to use it. So these display ones are set up using a class called display one. So instead of writing CSS to add a font, change the size, that sort of thing, Bootstrap is based off of like all these classes that it made. So like we can change this header one. Okay. And now it's changed. And then you saw that there was actually 6 different ones here. And I used the header too, but you can use any element you want. And you could even use a paragraph. Just need to add the Bootstrap class. So using Bootstrap is basically getting used to what classes you have available, what those styles are, and mostly adding the classes that you want. And you can still add your custom CSS as well, which we will do in a little bit. So know that, but you will be taking advantage of using all of these classes to significantly reduce the amount of code that you have to write. So back up here with these headers here, they do just automatically apply with the HTML tag, but they do have classes for it too. So if we wanted to use an H2 element, but we wanted to change it to the H1 size, we can just add H1. And that's all written down here. You know, they show you that here, how it works. And then H1 through H6 classes are also available for when you want to match the font styling of a heading, but cannot use that HTML element. So you can just add it on. Same thing too, like you can just use a paragraph. So you can apply these on anything that you want. Okay, so that is the big ones with our headings. There's other stuff here you can apply. So like, let's see. See if we can change this. So I just applied the mark class, which is like highlighted. So you can read about these. There's also, you can also change text alignment, style, weight, all that stuff with text utilities. So let's go there. So you can use it for common text alignment. If you guys remember, you can set that CSS property, but now we just have a class that we can use. So they've given you examples here. Text start, text center, and text end. So start here, center, and end. So we can easily now center this by using text center. I don't know if you guys are getting excited, but hopefully you can see how much easier this is. You know, before we're having to make a class, you know, like we do a text center and then we have to go to our CSS document and type out the class name and then apply the CSS styles. You know, it's like at least double the time. And eventually you will get so familiar with these classes that you'll just be styling and typing all at the same time once you're familiar. So there's a lot of different kind of utility classes. So you guys know about text alignment. We didn't talk too much about text wrapping and overflow, but that's an important one that you will use, and they have the classes for that. Text transform is one we talked about. So we can just immediately go text uppercase. And do that. Font sizes. You can easily change font sizes here. You just use these classes. So you can change our font size very easily. We've got these weights, bold, light. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that you guys can go over. And in general, this utilities drop down here has so many things you're going to use. Like we talked about border and padding. Those are big ones that you use. So you can easily add that. So let's go to, is it sizing? Spacing. Okay. So the notation for this is, so this is where you guys are going to get really good at reading documentation. So it's talking about breakpoints, which we will discuss more later, but in general, okay, so if we want to add padding or margin, it's this format: property, sides, dash size, or you can do property, sides, breakpoint, which we'll talk more about later. The breakpoints is for responsiveness. So they listed what you can use for property, what you can use for sides and size. that's going to be the size of like how big you want the margin or the padding. So we want to add padding. So we need a property. We want to add padding. So we're going to do P. And then we need to pick a side. So you can do top for margin top, bottom for the bottom, S. You have all these options, or we can leave it blank and we can do it on all 4 sides. So I want to add padding on all 4 sides. So we're actually going to not put anything here. And then we need to do a dash and say how big we want our padding to be. So they talk about here about how their sizes are. So I want the biggest possible padding. So let's do -5. Now you can see we have padding here. So if I take this padding 5 off, we have no padding. Or maybe that's too big. Let's change it to a 4. Okay, that looks better. Or maybe a 3 or a 2. So you can really easily change quickly how much padding you want. Now, let's say that we didn't want it to be on all 4 sides. I changed my mind. So we could do the sides here. So T or B is for bottom. So let's just apply it to the top. I just want a padding on the top. Or I can do bottom. Or I can do Y, just the Y axis, top and bottom. Or I can do X for just the sides there. Or let's see here. Start and end. So they use start and end for left and right. Start and left to right instead of left and right. But you can see how it's changed there. So yeah, and we can do the same thing with margin. It works just the same way, but we change it to an M. So no margin. So the padding made this get bigger, right? Oops. Because padding pads the box that it's in, but margin moves it away from elements. So let's add a margin here. Maybe we just wanted to move it away from that header to element. So let's do margin top. Okay, margin top 5. So that's a common one you'll use too, because you're designing out your website and you're going to probably want some space between elements. So that is padding and margin. And does anybody have any questions about how I'm applying these? Is it confusing? Okay. So you have so many options here too. Let's talk about positioning. So now we can center things without having to use that transform, translate, all of that. We can, let's just come in here. Let me see what, so these are sizes. I want to make this big as the viewport. Let's see. Okay. So that's huge. This BG success, I can go show you guys in a second. So there's a whole section of classes that apply background to. So BG stands for background, and then success is one of the colors. They have a whole like list of colors that you can use. So, but I want to show you the utilities for Sentry. So this also has a border class. And then let's get this some padding. Okay. So we've got this element and we want to center it here. Well, we need to make the parent position relative, like we talked about in general. So let's go back to positions. So you have all the same positions, just like you would apply the CSS, but we can just add the class now. So let's apply the position relative like we did to the parent. And now we want to position this. So what do we need to add to this header class to center it? The first step. What does its position need to be set to?
Is it relative?
Absolute. Its parent is relative, but we got to set this one to absolute. Okay. All right, so we've got it here, and now we can move it. So how they have it moving, we arrange it with top, bottom, which is just the same as before. But like I said, instead of left and right in CSS, they use start and end. So if we wanted to put it in the center, we could do top. Or what is it? Let's see. Okay, so these are percentages. So top 50, start 50. Okay, I'm going to save it. So now we've moved it here. You can see it's not totally centered. So they have a class for that too, because we just changed the position, we changed the location, but we didn't use the transform translate. So you can see here centering elements, just like you guys learned. You can apply the translate middle class, and that applies translate X 50% and translate Y. So let's see how that changes it. Translate middle. And there we go. Now we have a centered element. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot, but almost anything you can imagine that we've already gone over in class as far as changing styling, you're gonna have a class for that. Like the border I applied, I just applied border, but you can have border top, border end, bottom. You can easily change these border colors. Just check out, that there. You can change the border width. Now we've made it thick. Okay. Background, you already saw me use it. So these are all your options for background colors. So yeah, those are your utility classes. Let's see. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. They also have a bunch of pre-made components as well. So we can go to components, and one that you're going to use a lot is we got forms. Oh, here we go. Nav bar. That's right underneath of it. So you can actually see they've got all these classes for nav bar. Your standard HTML, and then they've added on these classes here. And you can see that this code, this is what it looks like. This is them going on to explain what these specific classes mean. And then, examples of what that looks like. You can see, another nav bar here. And it takes a while to get to know what all of these are, but what's cool is we have a website and we want to add a navigation bar to, well, you can just copy this. Okay, so I'm gonna put it here because we want it at the very top. I know that was a lot. But now we have a nav bar and it's already responsive. And we can change it too. And we'll be getting into more about what these classes mean. So like this nav bar expand large, this is what makes it responsive. Because you can see here, it goes ahead and collapses. We might want to get rid of that search bar. So we can just get rid of it. We can come in here and okay, where is it? It's letting me drag that out. Okay. So these are our links here. Home. Yeah, link. About. So you can just easily start, customizing this disabled class. If we read the documentation, just disables this, but we can get rid of that. So you can also read about how you change this nav bar. Is this nav bar brand here? So this takes a little while to get used to, but you have all these sort of pre-made components that you can tweak. And once you really get to know it, you could also just start typing it out too. I still copy and paste this in to my website. So you have so much more than just a nav bar too. Like they've pre-made these buttons that you can easily add just using class BTN. You can add the color. These are different buttons they have, more buttons, sizing the buttons. You can make these image cards. We're going to use these a lot too to highlight projects. Different ways to make these cards look, lists. Let's see. more stuff here. They've got these carousels, which are cool. So you can, you see here, add images just quickly with this code. Yeah, so we're going to use more of these and you'll see how they work when we start coding our project. But I'm just wanting to give you an idea of all of the kind of classes that are available here for you guys. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, without jumping too far ahead, in another class that I took on coding, we use containers a lot. It was like the main thing that we had to use. I was told at the time. Is that just like to help with like when we start grading and stuff?
Are you talking about specifically with Bootstrap?
Yeah.
Yes, the containers are required to use the grid system.
Okay, but otherwise, like if we're not using, for some reason, if we're not using like a grid in our HTML, we don't need to use a container.
Yes, correct. But I think you'll find that you use them a lot. Like,
Okay.
even when you think you're not, you are, because yeah.
Just with like the nav and things like that, it just kind of gives it like those attributes or whatever, the built-in.
Yeah. If you go to the grid system, and this is what we're going to start out with on Wednesday. But if you ever read this documentation, which you could do if you're really curious, because it'll tell you everything here, but in order to use it, what does it say? I don't know where it says it, but container and container fluid are required. It's just the way their classes are set up. So if you don't have it, certain classes won't work.
Okay.
That's all I got today, guys, unless you guys have more questions. We're going to get into layout on Wednesday, show you how the grid works and how we can change responsively very fast our layout. And then like I've said so many times, Saturday, we're going to actually, let me show you what we're going to build. It might be a little bit different because I have to go back over it. This is from last year, so. I'm going to show you how to use Bootstrap to basically build your own portfolio website. Obviously, we didn't finish this. Really wants you to connect with Facebook. And there's actually more, I think, that we could have added that we didn't get to with this. So this is, believe it or not, you guys have learned everything to build full-on websites. Well, almost. We're going to use the grid. That's a really key, but yeah.
So with Bootstrap in, like, it already has a bunch of presets, right? Like the colors and the fonts and everything. So is it pretty easy to change that, to customize it to what you want?
Yeah. Let me show you that real quick.
Yeah, do you have to make like a separate CSS file, or how does that work?
Yes, you'll just make a separate CSS file. Oh, it's not going. So what I would not recommend doing, let's say we want to change this hello world because it's up here. I'm sorry, it's not right. It's right here. I wouldn't change like display one. So I'm just going to put a style tag here just so you can see it. I would not, don't do this. It's very confusing to directly manipulate the Bootstrap classes that are already made. It's not very good practice. So you would just want to add on your own custom class, just like you're accustomed to doing. And every once in a while, you might find, because there's so much CSS applied in the Bootstrap that you're not seeing. Most of the time, you should be able to just like add on your own and do it. But if you're not getting the functionality you're expecting, this is a good time to use that important tag.
Yeah. And you would just have to link like your style sheet below the Bootstrap.
Correct. You would
Right,
do
to make
just
sure
the
that it
same
would.
way. Yep. Just right here. Just as many as you want. It works just the same. Yeah. I'm not going to add it because that might mess something up. But yeah, you can do that. Just the same way as usual, just make your own classes.
Okay. How widely used is Bootstrap? Like, do most front-end developers use it, or is it just to your preference?
I think that is just your preference. I have grown to really love Bootstrap because when I first learned, that's what they taught me. And I don't really know how many people use it, but I do know over the years there have like so many other libraries that have come out. So
and like jobs can require you to use a certain one, and you would just
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will say though, like a lot of jobs don't really, it's not like make or break if you don't know a certain library. Like that is not, that's definitely something that you can learn after you get hired, that as long as you kind of express that, you know, I know JavaScript really well or something like that, they'll be like, sure, yeah. And they're like happy to teach you that stuff on the job.
So would you guys suggest like mastering kind of CSS before using a framework? Like,
I would say yes, for sure. Don't rely on Bootstrap.
Yeah.
Make sure that you understand the CSS fundamentals first, just like you want to learn JavaScript before you jump into React or Vue.
Okay.
Great points, great questions. It's really common to like, there's just so many, you know, front end, back end, whatever. There's so many languages, there's so many frameworks, there's so many libraries. You're not gonna know all of it. It's very common to have to learn something new to do a specific job. So yeah, the foundations are very important to know. And when you know the foundations, you know, picking up a new framework, picking up a new library not going to necessarily take you a ton of time. You're basically just applying the same principles to a new thing, so you'll get faster and faster.
So are we doing a project next week is what you said?
Yeah, we're gonna do
profile page?
we're gonna do the Bootstrap grid on Wednesday and then go a little longer on Saturday. Gonna go over the full, like, setting up your project, setting up your files in an organized manner. So I'll actually type in a little bit of homework that you guys can do. You don't need to have it done by Wednesday, but by Saturday, it'd be good for you to have in a folder ready to go. A color scheme, which I can share with you my color scheme, you know, in class if you want to use that, but have like a headshot picture or just a picture of yourself that you want to use, or like, you know, a placeholder, have that ready. You can pick out like your header image, like you guys saw. I don't have, you know, like you can pick out an image like I showed you here that you want to use. But then I can share all my files that I bring to, if you guys just want to, you know, build the website the same way alongside me, but you could easily, you know, use a different image. It's the exact same code. You're just putting in a different image. So that's pretty much all you have to do this week is do that, at least have a headshot, but I'll type that all out in the homework.
And then if we wanted to share this profile page, sorry.
No, you're
No
fine.
questions. We'd have to use something like GitHub Pages, or like, how would we, like, it would just be on our computer, right? How would we, I guess, show it to people? I don't know, or like link our profile page.
Yeah, that is a whole,
A whole nother thing.
yeah,
I'm getting too far ahead of myself.
yeah, that's a whole other thing. But unfortunately I don't have time to cover that in this module, and it's a little bit beyond the scope of it. But I would recommend reading about that. I think you guys get into it in later modules, but I'm not 100%. Brayden, do you know? Like actually publishing your sites?
I don't, Zach might.
Mm.
GitHub Pages is definitely the easiest option for a static website. I mean, you're not deploying a backend or anything. So just search GitHub Pages. It's fairly easy, just a few clicks. As long as your repo's on GitHub, I should say, which I'm assuming it is.
Thank you. I haven't used GitHub Pages. So, alrighty. Well, if you guys have more questions, let us know. Reach out to me, reach out to your mentors. Yeah. I hope you guys have a great Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Go Lemurs.
Thank